The Silent Confession. Ethan Walker lived a simple life. He worked from home as a freelance graphic designer. His days were predictable, mostly quiet. He enjoyed spending time with a few close friends and listening to true crime podcasts. Nothing ever really happened in his small town, and Ethan liked it that way. One evening, he decided to take a walk after dinner. The air was cool, and the streets were damp from a recent rain. As he walked down a narrow street near the park, something caught his eye on the sidewalk. There, half buried in a pile of leaves, was an old cassette tape. It seemed out of place. Who used tapes anymore? Ethan bent down and picked it up. The label was faded, but one word was still clear: confession. The word sent a chill through him. He stood there for a moment, staring at it. He didn't know why, but he slipped the tape into his pocket and continued home. It was probably nothing, he thought. Maybe some old recording from years ago. But as he walked, his mind kept drifting back to the word on the label. Back in his apartment, Ethan couldn't shake his curiosity. He didn't even own a cassette player. It took a little digging, but he found an old one buried in his closet, something he hadn't touched in years. After dusting it off, he inserted the tape and pressed play. At first, there was only static. Ethan leaned closer, adjusting the volume. Slowly, a voice emerged from the noise. It was shaky and hoarse, as if the speaker was struggling to get the words out. "I don't know if anyone will ever hear this," the voice began, "but I have to confess." Ethan's heart raced. He turned up the volume, his eyes fixed on the cassette player. "I've done things," the voice continued. "Terrible things. Things I can't take back." The voice paused, heavy breathing filling the silence. "It started years ago," the man said. "I didn't mean for it to happen, but once you've taken a life, it changes you." Ethan sat frozen, unable to move. This wasn't some old music tape or forgotten recording. This was something real. The voice on the tape sounded desperate, filled with guilt. "I killed them," the man said. "All of them. And no one knows. No one has ever known." Ethan's blood ran cold. His mind raced. Was this a prank? Or was it real? He listened as the man on the tape detailed each murder, describing places and people Ethan had never heard of. But the worst part came at the end. "There's one more," the man said, his voice trembling. "I didn't want to do it, but I have no choice. It'll happen soon. And when it does, they'll finally know who I am." The tape clicked off, the voice vanishing into silence. Ethan sat there, staring at the player. His heart pounded in his chest. Who was this man? Were these murders real? He grabbed his phone and quickly searched for any unsolved murders in the area. To his shock, he found several cases that matched the descriptions from the tape unsolved, with no leads. Ethan's stomach churned. This couldn't be real. But if it was, the killer was still out there. And there was one more victim. A sickening thought crossed his mind. The man on the tape had said the last murder was going to happen soon. What if the next victim was someone he knew? Or worse, what if it was him? The next few days were a blur. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He started looking over his shoulder, noticing things he never had before: the car that seemed to follow him for blocks, the stranger who lingered too long at the corner near his building. He tried going to the police, but they didn't take him seriously. An old tape wasn't enough evidence for them. As the days went by, Ethan's paranoia grew. He couldn't sleep. And when he did, he dreamed of the man from the tape. Every sound in his apartment made him jump, and the feeling of being hunted never left him. Then one night, he received an anonymous message. It was short, only a few words. "You're next." His hands trembled as he read the message again and again. He couldn't stay in his apartment anymore. Grabbing what little he could, Ethan fled. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to get away. But no matter how far he ran, the feeling remained. Somewhere, the man from the tape was still out there, and he was coming for Ethan. And Ethan knew there was nothing he could do to stop him.